Podcast excellence since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network, kingofpodcasts.com.
Is it better to stay single or be in a toxic relationship?
We are all a little depraved and debaucherous. Here is the King of Podcasts.
And welcome. This is technically the very first episode of Depraved and Debaucherous for 2025. Thanks for listening in. King of Podcasts here with you. Website is kingofpodcasts.com. And of course, I don't put a lot of sponsors around here, a whole lot of fluff, because in my years of podcasting, you know what? I just kind of just go along with it. In August, I will be entering my 20th year in podcasting. So if anybody wants to ask me, why do I call myself King of Podcasts? Why did I pick that name out in 2012 and make it my username across the board? Well, that's one thing why. And for 20 years, coming up in August 1st to be exact, I've been damn good at it. Very good at it. And I am not afraid to go ahead and let my confidence show. If that's one thing I can actually be definitely confident and very secure in myself, is in my career in podcasting. When I learned about this here, coming out of radio and doing programs like this, I really felt into my own, because where I got the work in to do podcasting was not a corporate environment. It was on my own, whereas at a mom and pop organization, and I've been allowed to kind of get the free reign, creative control, and to help evolve into space. And I can tell you, the evolution of podcasting from 2005 to now has been, so wide reaching, so evolutionary, and so many changes. And to see that podcasting right now has become to the point where we're at such a great industry right now, so much happening where people want to be in part of programming right now more than ever. Now, there's a report I'm going to talk about in my Broadcasters podcast later this week that says there might be a drop off in the amount of new shows coming out, but more podcasters are seeing an increase, a double-digit increase in growth in their audiences. I can tell you for this fact that this program right here, Depraved and Debaucherous, had a great year. For those of you that listen on the YouTube channel, at King of Podcasts on YouTube, thank you. I've gotten so much great information off of there, great comments, great feedback. It is the one place where I absolutely will get feedback on the show. And I appreciate all of you for being a part and participating in it. It's been wonderful. I've really, really enjoyed putting this show together. And I knew I was going to have fun when I decided to go and tweak this show around and make it what it is today. It's been awesome. And I'm so glad to go and do this. And no slowing down. We're going to get back into it right now, because for those that are out of the holidays, look, for some single people like yours truly, yeah, single people like me, we're happy the holidays are over, behind us, because I didn't have anyone to, romantically or intimately to celebrate the holidays with. Okay. There's only so much family out there, and, family has their own things as well. Nothing wrong with that. The other thing too was that I've talked about on my program here so many times where I had things that went wrong during the holiday season, from cuffing season, which is why I make it so important to talk about, all the way up until New Year's Eve. Because New Year's Eve also has been, at one point, one of the worst days, the worst nights I ever had in my life. I remember getting out of work, working at a TV station, my first job out of college, and going to the karaoke bar. There was this bar that, Friday and Saturday nights did karaoke. I enjoyed doing the karaoke. It was something that was fun. And I actually had some friends of mine that I already knew from before that would get together and we'd go hang out. And then I still kept going. And I still knew some people there, but then it was like, you get inside of those smoky bar environments, you're just out there and just drinking away. You're seeing everybody else that's like all hooked up, and you see girls that you see regularly all the time. It's almost like high school again. You see girls that are in there and you're like, man, I wish she was with me. And I was so badly in a point of like, I'm going here because I have no other place to go. Because I don't have any girl to go out with, go on a date with and this and that. And I was feeling pretty bad about myself. This is what, 2003, 2004? So late 20s. And I remember one night I was talking to a girl because I wanted to go ahead and be able to have a girl to kiss before the ball dropped. And I remember I got off of work late and I was running to the bar and I started taking down rum and coke shots or rum and coke drinks 2 at a time. And I got to my 4th and I had 2 more shots in front of me. Like I was taking 2 at a time, but never normally do that. Almost got into a fight right before the ball dropped. And I'm sitting there with 2 drinks in front of me on front of the bar. And I have tears dropping into both glasses. Let's just say it's always been tough to even look at the ball drop on New Year's Eve. After that, I just started staying home. I never went out on New Year's Eve. And then after that, once Uber became a thing and I knew I could do that at night and I could make money on New Year's Eve, the first night I did New Year's Eve, I made $400. And it was just like $400 or $500, 8 hours or whatever. And just, okay, yeah, I'll take the money off the people that are going out the New Year's Eve and partying and all that stuff. Great. The last 2 years I've done deliveries, alcohol, food. So I don't have anybody in the car to celebrate with me in the car. Like, it's great. I want to be to myself. You know, it's funny where I will talk to certain girls now, you know, that I've gotten on some of these sites and all here and there throughout the years, and virtually talking to some of the girls that I talk to that, you know, they're just nice. They want to just be friend. They want to friend zone me because I guess I'm so wonderful to be friend zone. I'm the safe space. I'm saying that because there's a girl out there that already says I'm her safe space again. Like, it's whatever. But then what happens is that I just want to be to myself. I want to keep myself busy. I don't want, when the holidays start slowing down, to start having to have time to think about things that happened on my birthday, which was November 25th. To think about things that happened right around Christmas time or into January. And like a lot of the stories I've talked about where I've been friend zoned, a lot of that usually did happen around cuffing season, right at the end of the summer and going into the fall and going into the new year. It was always that second half of the year that was tough. And it sucked. And I've gone through that. I'm like, well, you know, even talking about it right now, I haven't even like thought about it because I just was like running. No, I was going double time on everything. Like when my full-time work was starting to slow down because everybody's going away for vacation and all the other work was going away and I had nothing else to go and do. I had these podcasts to do, right? I was trying to figure out what else I had. Like, I didn't want to feel like going out dating anybody because right now I haven't been out or talked to anyone. I mean, I've done a little bit of talking here and there, but nothing's happened. Like, I'm not out socializing just to be socializing. And I just don't feel like going out to just waste money. I just didn't want to do that either. So the biggest thing I would see when I was at the bar as well was how many toxic relationships were out there. Because I would see girls that, and I told you about, was one girl I remember talking to that we knew from all my friends in the circles that I hung out with when I first moved after I moved for college, closer to the bigger city and closer to my school. And friends that I met around in a neighborhood I was at, and I just met like a group of friends, a circle of friends that just got to be a bigger circle of friends, and a bigger circle of friends, and people that knew people that knew people. How I met one girl I was trying to go out with, and I never did a proper date, but I told her I was interested, and things just fizzled bad. I was thinking about that today too. But all I know is that I need to just keep myself busy so I'm not unhappily single. And that's the one thing I had to go and learn the hardest thing about. All right. So a lot of books, a lot of audiobooks, a lot of reading books, a lot of studying, research, and just understanding. The reason I'm doing this show in the first place is because it's my own personal therapy, just to kind of like just vent out and just unload at what happened. And then just look at what the rest of the world is like. So when I did go to therapy myself, I did it for 6 months at one point, and I tried to go to another therapist. It didn't feel like it worked. But the one thing I got out of the 6 months with Dr. Weil, Dr. Michelle Weil, Palm Beach Gardens. I remember. Reason I was able to go to therapy was because, at the TV station I mentioned, we had a very comprehensive, full medical plan, which included mental health coverage. I wonder why. But that's another story. When I went to see this lady, unloaded, I didn't leave anything out. But when she heard about the things that were going on with me in terms of relationships, when I came out of there, and I still come out of it anyways, is I needed to go ahead and look at what everybody else looked like. Because for me, being so naive and so novice into relationships where I've only dated up to the third date, I'm not afraid to say that. But what I know was that even if I got into the relationship, if I did, the one thing I never wanted to get into was once something was going to be bad or something that was going to be, I don't even know it was going to be toxic, but that's the word I didn't know of. It's just, I didn't want to be in something I wasn't going to be happy in. It was being selfish. And I've stayed selfish. I know that I want things to be a certain way. So I want to have control, and I don't want to compromise so far out of my own self that I'm going to feel uncomfortable. I can't compromise out of my comfort zone. And that is why I stay single. But I need to give myself a validation as to why I did it. And that was one of the things where all the studying, all the research, all the reading, all the soul searching, I needed to understand why I did what I did. Because there had to be a reason why I did. It was like almost instinctual. And I think there's a lot of things I've been able to go ahead and validate and qualify why I did it. Because I think of all the relationships that are out there that have gone bad, or people that have gone and had some really horrible things. The friends I've had around me and the bad relationships they were in and how toxic I saw them in during the time I was hanging out with them. Like, there's so many. I told you about the one guy that was like kind of like a gigolo. He just like with different girls all the time. There's one guy I remember that just pretty girls he was with, but like they were all damaged and broken and toxic. And the kind of guys that went through like really bad, that were just unhealthy, emotionally unhealthy women they were with. And you could just see everything was going bad about them. Well, I got a friend of mine, a best friend of mine. I had to stop him from killing himself. I don't know if I told that story, but yeah. It got to the point there was just so many toxic relationships he went through. He's also gone cold turkey for years. He's my age, a little bit older. But he almost did something to himself. I happened to catch him before he did anything drastic and stopped him from doing something that was going to ultimately change. Because that's how far down he went. But he was in those relationships, living with or just spending whole lots of time and just being very intimate and sexual and just engulfing into just some bad relationships. Like, it's just so toxic. I don't care how good looking the women were, how good they were in bed. It just wasn't good. And so that was one of the things I just don't want to go and deal with. I saw everything around me of people that were in relationships that they went to divorce or bad breakups, or how people would just like sever apart. And I was like, man, I can't do it. I can't. And I just realized, okay, I might have been mooched and I might have been manipulated and, spun around a lot of ways. But I really feel like there's like divine intervention, divine providence. There's a reason why I didn't get caught up in all those relationships. I still got messed up in certain things. But I said to myself, you know what? I might have some narcissistic tendencies, the manipulative tendencies. I know I do. But I think for me, it was like I needed to do something to self-destruct and protect myself from doing any real harm to anybody else, until I really understood what was going on with me. I'm not happily single. Like I'm comfortably single. I'm content being single right now. I'm not in a rush for a relationship. I'm not worried about having a relationship or having love. I don't know what being in love is like. I've said it. I can't tell you how many girls I've told that to when they ask about me. I was like, "Why?" If they say I'm a good-looking guy, it's like I do kind of go cynical and say, "Well, I don't see what it is. Did they see in me?" But that's how it just feels like, right? But that's also why I've seen the warning signs. I've seen the red flags from years and years of friends that went in bad relationships and just kind of like living around what they were going through or knowing what I went through and hearing so many stories, thousands of stories over the years. So when I look at stories from Psychology Today, two that they came out with, one at the end of the year, or actually it was in November, but I'm only getting to it right now. Is it better to be in a bad relationship or to be unhappily single? It was a study that came out talking about that being involuntarily single can affect emotional well-being. And people in relationships had higher life satisfaction than singles, and singles, even involuntary ones, had higher life satisfaction than people in bad relationships. So it was the scientific journal of Evolutionary Psychological Science, and they talked to people in 12 different countries. Okay. 30% of the volunteers were married, 23.5% in a relationship but not married. 20% almost roughly were single by choice. 12.2% were single searching for a partner. 9% were between relationships. 6.5% unclear relationship status. So again, about 50-50 split between involved and not involved. People who were married or in a relationship had the highest life satisfaction and emotional well-being. People who were involuntarily single but would have a partner were least happy. Right. Those that were still kind of actively dating or actively looking. Single but looking. That's like a status you always see. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that for years that was always a status on, it was a status quite a bit on various times I would look at, what was it? Maybe I don't think in certain dating sites. There was single, not looking, single, and looking. They don't put that out there anymore. But it's interesting. And people will still write single and looking. But yeah, if you are still trying to look for love, then yeah, your happiness is just not there. The high life satisfaction and emotional well-being. When you try to break away from the need, the necessity of trying to fulfill that love that you want to give that's out of your heart, and you don't see anybody there, then you stop. And when I stopped pressuring myself and stopped getting stressed out about it, I felt better about myself. People who choose to be single or were between relationships had medium levels of life satisfaction and emotional well-being. That's where I'm at. I'm going to just stay single because it just doesn't work. And I think the one thing I got to say to myself was that there were absolutely opportunities for me to be in a relationship, and that would have been so damaging to me. I really believe that. Of the girls that I remember talking to, and go ahead and reflect back at where things were, I know exactly what was going on. Is that the girls that I chased, the girls that I was pursuing, no matter how nice and sweet and understanding, just and fascinating they were to me, I chased broken, emotionally damaged women. I did. There's no doubt about it. And I never understood what they were going through and why they would push back on me. But then my naivety, my not understanding, or my emotional intelligence, let's just say that. Up until about 40 years old, I didn't have emotional intelligence. None. Maybe I just wanted people to be emotionally intelligent for me, and that's all. But I've also learned that doesn't happen for guys. Not necessarily. Unless it's a girl that really, really want. Now, the other thing I can say too is this. It is one thing to be said about changing your physical looks. So like for me, I went on a diet journey. 2016, when I finally got told the wake-up call, diabetic. Well, that's not the same anymore. Like I got myself out of that. But hey, I've been able to keep 110 pounds off. All right. Hovering around 300 pounds right now. At 6'2" or 6'1.5", that's not horrible. I mean, I still got 40 pounds left to go, and I've been struggling for 2 years to try to keep getting more off. But either which way, I do know the difference is, besides the way I move around and I'm able to go ahead and function, is much better. And my choices on what I do in terms of working out and, going out and then just my food choices, it's all changed. So that's all positive self-improvement reinforcement. And I do notice that there are women that will not look at me like they used to. There was a repulsion when they saw me. I was just fat and just slop. I mean, it was bad. And I would just go out for food, whatever. Okay. And I must admit, I hate who I was. Now I detest it. I'm like, what was I doing? Like, I asked myself, like, there's just so many meals I never had to have. So many I didn't have to have. And I wish I just knew better. I could have done better. A whole lot better. But hey, that's part of what happens too. But I mean, like I said, there are women that look at me as like, I've kind of kept myself to a point where I look younger than my age. And I don't necessarily dress anything much more significant, but it's like everything looks better on me. And I get better. I feel like the body language I get from women is much better. And there's always going to be women that are going to be they're just going to have a certain look, thinking I'm going to like try to hit on them or whatever. That happens, right? What am I going to do about that? Now, also being talked about here is when relationship quality was included in the statistical analysis. So for those that were in relationships, if it was not good. Well, those that were in good relationships, higher emotional well-being, life satisfaction compared to people in bad relationships. Bad relationships, people that were compared to singles, that they were more unhappy than single people. More time being unhappy than single people. And single people had higher life satisfaction than those in bad relationships. And remember, you got to keep in mind that people that feel like relationships are kind of bad, there's one difference between being emotionally bad and going downhill and those that are just struggling because of the financial issues of it or just growing to have a family together, right? Growing kids and bringing them up. Like that struggle and like trying to just continue to have the kind of relationship that you had before kids and to keep that active and interesting. Yeah, very tough. So like some of the friends that I keep that are now, yeah, I know I see them in various relationships because they talk about it all the time. I'm not trying to bring it up, but I sit back there like a social butterfly. I'm just sitting back there and just listening in, absorbing everything because I don't ever lecture. I don't go ahead and jump on the people and start asking questions and all. I'm not overly vocal, not like I used to be because I got this platform. So my podcasting takes care of me being, a chatterbox, but I don't do that kind of stuff out everywhere else. Only to certain people, pretty much now. That's what happens with older age. So that's part of the study that came out here. Now, the other part has come in is a new trend that's come out called Let Them or Hear Them, or the Let Them theory. It's a new thing that's trending on social media, arguing that chronically disrespectful relationships shouldn't be sustained. Instead of trying to fix the other person, it's best to let them behave as they will. Oh, I can tell you I've heard this before. Like there's a lot of people where I was one of those people. Let them. Like it's one of those things where, and I feel bad when women are going through this. If they're in a toxic relationship and they just feel like they're just going through things and you can't get themselves out of it. Well, the biggest problem is that for the women that they get into these bad relationships and the men they friend zone, let's make this point clear. There's toxicity in the friend zone as well, because when a guy is put in a friend zone and the girl is in a toxic relationship, and then she's trauma dumping to him, and the guy is trying to encourage and trying to push along, being selfish himself, thinking, well, maybe if I stay along with her and I help her out, she's going to be with me in the long run. I'll finally get to be with her after all. Don't do it. And more importantly now than ever, this let them theory comes into play because, I know part of me would say, I feel bad for a girl that's going through something that's really bad, but it's like, she's a big girl. She's going to have to figure it out on her own. She's going to want to make her own mistakes. Like, what is a guy that's being single that was in love with her, and maybe she knows it and probably does know it. She's not going to listen to him to try to go ahead and be convinced that she needs to be with him. First of all, that's being selfish on the friend zone guy, on the guy that's being friend zoned, because he's thinking, well, just rebound to me. No, because what's going to happen is this girl's in this toxic relationship. Once she breaks off of it, hopefully she does. When she does, she's going to need time to recover. And she needs somebody objective and sound without any involvement or any kind of string or anything in the game, right? They're not attached at all to this, right? They're completely objective, completely outside of the whole thing. So they can come in with a real clear mind and help a girl that's into a toxic relationship coming out of one and just trying to bounce back. And that's one of those things. Now, in this story here, also from Psychology Today, they talk about a catchphrase from Mel Robbins, podcaster, author of the Let Them Theory. And the idea is encouraging those struggling with toxic relationships to simply allow their nemesis to behave as they will. So she summarizes her theory and says, let them judge you. Let them misunderstand you. Let them gossip about you. Let them be right. Let them not like you. Let them not speak to you. Kindly step aside and let them go. So narcissism, gaslighting, that's what she's talking about right here. To let it go, ignore, deflect, don't be affected by it. So, but she's saying that those struggling in toxic relationships, by just letting the person just vent and saying it, okay, then maybe things will get better. For women, that's one thing, because it is emotional in those areas of the manipulation. For guys, it's not as strategic. It's much more logical. For guys doing the manipulation and letting them gossip about you, be right, not like you, not speak to you, that's strategic from men that are trying to assert control, assert authority on a girl. For a girl, it's normally going to be the other way around. It's going to be more emotional, more of, well, she's just going to go and nag and misbehave and just go off on a tangent. But if you are just letting her just have her piece, she's, you hear one thing from her verbally, right in front of you, but then there's the subcommunication that says, just let her say her thing. You're not supposed to be saying anything here. You're not supposed to be trying to fix her problems, right? Remember, when a girl's telling you about her problems, we're not supposed to go and think in the thought of the art of communicating with women. The psychology of women. There's a book I remember I've listened to several times. They talk about subcommunication. You have to understand that there's women that will tell you about their problems, but they're not telling you for you to fix them. They just want an ear to hear. And trust me, that is a very hard lesson to learn, because sometimes I will forget. But needless to say, it all comes up like that. Now, they talked to Anna Russell, who is a reporter with the New Yorker, that there's an increasing number of young people that are cutting out their parents. And others think that being something more transparent about this. Some relationships are not worth sustaining if the relationship is chronically disrespectful, injurious, or tormenting. It may be best to let them go. But danger lies in categorically dismissing or abandoning relationships when issues arise. They also talked to Dr. Donna Hicks, associate at the Weatherhead Center for International Affairs at Harvard, and she wrote a book, Dignity in its Essential Role in Resolving Conflict, that dignity invests each of us with an inherent value and worth. When individuals are denied their dignity, they feel inconsequential and irrelevant. They become resentful, even enraged, because they feel they are not seen or heard. That's not always the case, though. It's not always necessarily dignity. There's just other parts that are coming in here as well. So, like the idea of the dignity model, that truth is larger than its separate stories, crying out for change, both parties are part of a larger dysfunction, and it's more about exposing the truth to ourselves and others when we're ultimately set free by it. When we honor others' dignity, we strengthen our own. But it's one of those things where it's women, when it comes to men interacting with women in those struggles of the relationship, let them vent, let them moan, let them bitch, let them complain. But for women that are dealing with guys that are doing the same thing, acting feminine, by the way, emotionally manipulative, It's for strategic manipulation. Okay, it's logically strategic to control and to put in place, because they're already locking you on their emotions anyway from how they got you in the first place. But once they have you locked in and you're relying on the fact that you had a certain honeymoon in that relationship that was really good and you're hoping maybe things will get back to that, well, what happens is then they find a way to just start controlling, take your dignity away. As this doctor says, Dr. Hicks, take your dignity away, bring you down a couple notches, make you feel inferior, and then we'll go ahead and keep you into submission, emotional submission, until you decide to let them go. So I think those stories are very important to go and bring up about this as well. Now, one last note I got to talk about here on the program before we wrap things up. The Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively case. It's ongoing. So I did not talk about this week, but apparently we have some trouble. Because right now, Justin Baldoni, as of last week, I think I did talk about this a bit, but yes, he's come back, and a lot of what was being talked about on TikTok and across the field on social media was the fact that he was setting up a lawsuit because he had receipts. He had text messages showing about what was going on with Blake Lively. So now it looks like that Blake Lively's in the wrong after all, because we're seeing the evidence in front of us now. It's been brought out. So I'm taking the story from Forbes, and they're reporting the fact that now Justin Baldoni is fighting back against allegations that he created a hostile work environment and helped engineer a smear campaign against her, claiming the actress undermined him throughout the filmmaking process and ultimately edited the final cut of the film, according to a suit he filed against the New York Times. Now, this doesn't take away anything about this guy being a male feminist, a narcissist in his own, and a manipulator. It doesn't matter. He still is anyway. But when it comes to Blake Lively's case, it looks like, he might be a number of things that he is, okay, that are not good about him, not good traits about him, but that doesn't mean he was liable or that he should be smeared by Blake Lively like he was on such a big scale. And now he's coming back against the New York Times, accused the newspaper of libel after it published an explosive story into her claims of harassment and what she called the smear campaign. We talked about it. So he says that he was steamrolled on the set by Lively's constant attempts to change things about the film, aggressively berated by Ryan Reynolds, her husband, over misunderstanding about fat shaming, and that Lively persistently tried to overstep Baldoni in the editing process. Now, moving along in here, all the things that happened to him as a result. We talked about everything that went through him as a result of all this. So his attorney is now speaking out about this. So his lawyer says the lawsuit will be filed. His team's working on it right now. The filing will show new text messages between the film's two stars for the world to see. And Lively's team planted negative stories about Baldoni, accusing, because now the lawsuit says that they were ignoring the fact that Leslie Sloan, Lively's publicist, planted her own negative stories about Baldoni, claiming that he was a sexual predator, and feeding false stories to the Daily Mail and New York Post, including one article alleging that there were multiple HR complaints against Baldoni made during production. The lawsuit says that Blake Lively interfered with his authority in the editing process. Despite Baldoni incorporating 7 pages of her notes into his edit, she allegedly created her own cut of the film and threatened not to promote the film if her version wasn't seriously considered for release. And the studio decided to test both versions of the film under the condition that Lively would support whichever performed better. But despite Baldoni's cut scoring significantly higher with audiences, they reneged, and once the studio had conceded and decided to go with the cut that Blake Lively and her team chose to put out there. So there's going to be a lot of shit going on about this, and it's not going to be good. So countersuing is already being done. It has been done, and Baldoni's going to get his money. And you know what? I feel bad that both of these people are even going to get a chance to go and be shown out there. Like, it's a lot of dirty laundry is going to go out there, a lot of mudslinging, and it's bullshit. Because you know what? They're both not good people. Let's just make that clear. Justin Baldoni, I still don't like the guy. Okay, his movie was good. He played great scumbag because that's who he is. I believe it wholeheartedly. And regardless of that, Blake Lively, no better. But she's wrong about this, apparently. And if this lawsuit goes where it does, and Blake Lively, it doesn't work in her favor, oh boy, she's going to pay a price for it. And it's going to be tough on her. Like, this is her fault. wow, this movie really just took a toll on her family and all. And it's like, man, maybe if there was somebody else to be picked out, but the author thought Blake Lively would be a good person for the role. Well, she's also very much broken. Let's just say both of them are both emotionally broken and messed up in the heads, which is why they were so perfect together in this movie. Because emotionally, they're just screwed, and they're also very much depraved and debaucherous.